On This Week in Iowa, analysis of the Democratic presidential debates, which candidates made surprising headlines. Then someone not on the debate stage, Governor Steve Bullock, where low-polling candidates go from here. And later, the Medicaid mess continues in Iowa, the new watchdog at the State House. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. I'm Sabrina Ahmed. The first debate of the 2020 campaign season is complete after 2 nights of the Democratic presidential candidates going head-to-head in Miami. The first round consisted of Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, and Beto O'Rourke to name the top polling candidates. So we'll break down the big moments from the first night first, and then we'll get into the second night. And we're sharing a little bit about what surprised us. So, of course, we have our analysts, Pat Reinert from the Iowa Starting Line and Craig Robinson with the Iowa Republican joining us. To start, gentlemen, can you give me your impression of the debates overall, very quickly?
Confusing to a certain extent, but hopefully helpful to a lot of Democratic voters out there who probably haven't seen a whole lot of these folks ever before in an extended period of time. A lot of the kind of predictions early on was that the big takeaways from these things was going to be how, people went after Biden and Sanders, and that happened to a certain extent. But I always thought that the biggest thing, the most help for Democratic caucus goers out there was just to see who all of these lesser-known candidates are, to see if any of them stood out.
Look, I think they always have to have their names up on the screen as I'm watching, because I mean, I'm just getting to know a lot of these Democrat candidates, and obviously the bigger names that are running, but someone would say something and be like, that was pretty good, and then you're like, who is that again? And I'm trying to figure it out, and it takes forever for their names to come back. So it's interesting, though. I think the debate season is when it all begins.
Yep.
Now it feels real, doesn't it?
It feels like a new phase for sure.
Okay, so give me your impression overall of night one, where, again, we had Beto and Warren and Booker as kind of the top polling candidates.
Well, I think, Julian Castro was the one who probably surprised the most people. My team, Starting Line team, was out at a whole lot of different debate watch parties, and he stood out from there because he was very aggressive in a lot of back and forth with Beto O'Rourke over immigration. It was odd to see so many people gang up on O'Rourke, who had a little bit of a tough night, but I think he's still going to be fine here.
Who wasn't the front runner in that field?
No.
I mean, this is where I think politics is interesting. So before the debates, you look at it and you think, okay, this is what I'm going to watch for. And then you watch the debate and something completely different happens. Right. And I thought, in some respects, I thought, well, maybe Elizabeth Warren had an advantage of being the focus, the main candidate on night one when people are just going to start tuning into this. And then as you watched it, especially when I watched the second debate, it's like, boy, I bet you Elizabeth Warren is at home wishing she was there last night.
On that stage.
And meanwhile, you have Beto O'Rourke, who, a young, charismatic candidate, and you saw him really struggle in that first night debate.
I'd like to play a soundbite real quick from that exchange, if we can.
This is an important point. My plan, and I'm glad to see that Senator Booker, Senator Warren, and Governor Inslee agree with me on this. My plan also includes getting rid of Section 1325 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, to go back to the way we used to treat this when somebody comes across the border, not to criminalize desperation, to treat that as a civil violation. And here's why it's important. We see all of this horrendous family separation. They use that law, Section 1325, to justify under the law separating little children from their families. Jose, and so I want to challenge every single candidate on this stage to support the repeal of Section 1325.
Okay, so then after that, that's kind of when he and Beto went at it. So you mentioned it a little bit, but you said you didn't think it really brought him down much. But then Craig, you kind of said that maybe he didn't have his shining moment.
No, I don't think he did. I think that he has, in every debate and every little contest, you have to live up or exceed your own expectations, especially in a big field. And so when you look at the first night and you look at who's on that stage, you expected Beto O'Rourke to impress. And I think then he ends up getting into this immigration dispute or debate with Julian Castro, and Castro out-edged him on it. I mean, looked much more competent, much more knowledgeable on the issue, and I think that really hurts O'Rourke in a major way.
Okay, I want to keep talking about this, but let's move on to healthcare because that's another huge issue that happened. And I'd like to specifically highlight Senator Warren's comments on healthcare because she got a lot of attention. So take a listen.
I'm with Bernie on Medicare for All. I spent a big chunk of my life studying why families go broke. And one of the #1 reasons is the cost of health care.
So the healthcare question is, of course, an interesting one. The moderators were clearly trying to kind of see if there was any daylight in between all of these candidates on this issue. So what was your takeaway on the healthcare issue?
Well, this is one of the few policy issues where you do have clear, understandable differences between the candidates. Because sometimes these big climate change plans, they're different, but like, unless you really know the science behind it, you may not know what is better. But a lot of them do differ on healthcare. And one of the interesting things that I heard, I was out at a Democratic debate watch party of kind of undecided Democrats down in Winterset last night, and a number of the earlier this week, and a number of the Democrats there were not for Medicare for all, and they appreciated the candidates in the second debate, Biden and Bennett, who defended the Affordable Care Act and say, let's not do away with everything that Obama did. So I don't think, especially in the Iowa caucus, it's obvious which is the best healthcare position.
Quick response.
Well, yeah, I think it's difficult. You saw when Kamala Harris came out for her CNN town hall debate, and she initially said she was opposed to private healthcare, and she had to retract that. And last night you saw there's more of a mix between these two candidates, where there are those who really want single payer Medicare for all, and then there's people who want to still have choice in the marketplace. So there is a difference between these 20 candidates.
So obviously we had a little bit more fiery of a conversation on night 2 of the debate. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll focus on night 2 of the presidential Democratic debates.
1 year ago, floodwaters consumed streets, businesses, and homes.
My husband almost drowned in that backyard.
And took a life.
He gave to the community. He never said no. That was the kind of man he was.
Homeowners demanded help.
Are we a priority?
What city planners learned and the action they're taking.
That flash of water has a place to wait.
Plus how businesses and families are moving on. Join me for a WeAreIowa.com original documentary tonight at 8.
Honda was named the 2019 Best Overall Brand and Best Value Brand by Kelley Blue Book. So when you buy a Honda, you're getting an amazing vehicle for an amazing value. More amazing than Toyota, Ford, and Subaru. Come into your local dealership today and get a great deal on an amazing Honda.
Attention military service members. If you or a loved one used dual-sided combat arms earplugs during duty between 2003 and 2015 and then suffered from tinnitus, ringing in ears, partial or total hearing loss, ruptured eardrum, you may be entitled to financial compensation. These earplugs manufactured by 3M Company expose thousands of U.S. military service members to damaging levels of sound. Learn more about your legal options. Call Thomas J. Henry today for a free and confidential consultation or go to tjhlaw.com.
Attention all Americans. Introducing Neuromedics, a biotech company you can now invest in. Anyone can invest. Become a shareholder and join the fight against Alzheimer's and other neuroinflammatory diseases. Neuromedics is developing NE3107 as a therapeutic for neurological diseases in which neuroinflammation is a major contributing factor, such as Alzheimer's, migraines, and Parkinson's. Call now to discover how you can invest.
From the capital city, you're watching This Week in Iowa with Sabrina Ahmed, getting to the heart of what's happening in Iowa politics.
Night 2 of the Democratic presidential debate had, I'd say, quite a bit more fireworks, maybe even some food fighting and personal attacks. Big names included Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and assumed frontrunner Joe Biden. So we're, of course, continued to be joined by our wonderful political analyst, Pat and Craig. So initial reactions to Thursday night's debate.
Yeah, a lot more happened. And this is what happens when most of kind of the top polling candidates are together on one night. And one of the nice things about it is that you saw why it's justified that they're kind of in that top tier. Buttigieg and Kamala Harris in particular came through very well that evening.
I think they had an advantage of watching you know, watching the first debate, and you're reminded of probably what your advisors are telling you, like, you got to be aggressive. If you want to say something, you got to get in there and make your point and get out. You know, you're not going to have 5 minutes to elaborate on a plan. And so I think they had a little advantage of watching the night before.
Wasn't it kind of a lot of fighting, though? I mean, there was a lot of yelling. At one time, I found myself yelling at the TV, like, Leo, stop talking.
Well, and they were like, the moderators could hardly get in and control things at a moment. And then I actually thought when Harris, you know, said, hey, the American people aren't looking for a food fight here, I actually thought the tone and tenor of that debate changed a little bit.
Yeah.
People at my debate watch party all applauded that one.
Yeah. They want
Even Joe Biden applauded that one.
They want to know where these candidates differ and stand on issues.
Well, they do. And I asked folks at my debate watch party, like, what was your takeaway? Instead of hearing things about the candidates, they're like, well, we're just tired of them talking over each other.
Right.
Okay, so we have mentioned Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. It's kind of made quite a bit of news. So let's take a look at their exchange, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education.
So then Harris responded saying that it was the responsibility of the federal government to step in when states aren't doing the right thing. It was very fiery. So Pat and Craig, do you think that the vice president handled that situation well?
Probably not too well. I think Kamala Harris certainly got the best of him in that exchange, and perhaps you know, made him look a little bit out of touch with where the party is at, but she also did a great job of making this issue that is decades past still personal and still, you know, take that through to the viewers of why it is still important that we talk about these things, because they are personally hurtful to a lot of people that lasted a long time.
I agree with what Pat said, but I'm shocked that Biden wasn't prepared for this. This was the lead up coming into this. We were talking about these issues headed into this debate, and I thought he should have been ready for it. I mean, I felt like he was just caught flat-footed here, and I even expected in the first night for Cory Booker to make an issue, even though Biden's not on the stage with you, to make an issue, because Booker was making headway on this issue. And this is an important fight to watch, because you know how important black voters are in the nomination process here. I mean, you look at Harris and you look at where Biden's polling today, she needs to peel those voters away from him in South Carolina and elsewhere in the state if she's going to win this thing.
It was good on that front. It was also just good on Kamala Harris showing her personality overall, because a big thing that every Democratic caucus-going voter wants to see is who up on that stage looks like they could take on Donald Trump. And the way that Kamala Harris took on Joe Biden, that was tough, that was personal, that was effective. You could see her doing that against Trump.
So we have a really long soundbite that we won't play about Pete Buttigieg and his exchange talking about the issues in South Bend, Indiana, where he's the mayor. And there was an officer-involved shooting, and a boy died, and now there's been quite a bit of backlash. So talk to me about his response to admitting that there was wrongdoing versus Biden's response to pushing back.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a couple folks at our debate watch party kind of noticed, was that, yeah, that Buttigieg essentially took responsibility. Hey, I haven't been able to get it done yet, whereas Biden was still very much forcibly defending his past decisions and actions.
And voters don't expect these candidates, you know, especially if you're 70-some years old, to be perfect. You know, I think candidates show some depth, show places where you've grown and you've changed. And that was the other frustrating thing about Biden. Yes, this is part of your history, but I don't think that's what defines Joe Biden. You know, I mean, he was vice president under Barack Obama, and you know, has a record that he can tout on a number of issues. And I think it was a mistake where, you know, I feel like these are opportunities. Buttigieg was able to take that issue, deal with it. Now he's moving on. Biden didn't deal with it. Now he's in spin control.
I wish we had more time to continue that conversation, but we'll take a short break. They're sticking with us. We've got one more block after this.
Iowa
Iowa summers are perfect for outdoor family fun, and the Des Moines area has a wealth of events and activities that can keep the most active families busy from morning till night. Make plans today to visit Des Moines, and be sure to include a visit to Adventureland Resort, including Adventureland Park, Adventure Bay Water Park, and Adventureland Inn. Come share the fun with family and friends and make the memories of a lifetime this summer at Adventureland.
As parents, we know how important it is to save for our children's educations. We want to provide our kids with the knowledge and inspiration they'll need to become confident, successful adults. Saving for their educations now with a College Savings Iowa 529 account can go a long way toward giving them bright futures. Register to win a $529 College Savings Iowa 529 account at iowa529contest.com before June 30th.
Dear America, to your big cities and small towns, to the heartland and the farmland, from stream sides to every mountainside, let freedom ring. Happy birthday, America. Yours, Toyota. Lease a new 2019 RAV4 for $259 per month, or get $1,250 finance cash when you buy RAV4. Find yours at buyatoyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.
Every cookie sold in the Girl Scout Cookie Program helps girls learn lifelong lessons in people skills, decision-making, and goal setting. It's amazing how much you can learn from a cookie.
You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
Welcome back, everyone. Continuing our discussion following the first presidential debate of the 2020 cycle. But there was one candidate who wasn't on the stage who kind of made a big fuss about not being on the stage, and that was Steve Bullock, the governor from Montana. So this is him getting Fong's Pizza and taking it to, very good choice, taking it to his volunteers who were still campaigning for him despite him not being on the stage. So what happens for candidates like that, or some of those lower tier candidates who didn't get a lot of words in?
Look, I think it's more important to get on the debate stage and then stay there. So Bullock not being on there isn't as big of a deal as if you are one of these other candidates that made the first round but won't make the second round. So look, if he qualifies for the next debate, I think he'll be fine. If he doesn't, then that becomes an issue. But it's also an issue for these people who are out on the wings. Can you stay on the debate stage? That in and of itself is going to be difficult to do.
Which it's a higher threshold for not only individual donors to give to your campaign, but it's also for polling data too. So
yeah, it's going to start getting tougher for some of these lesser known candidates.
So let's look forward then. So do you think that Joe Biden will still be the front runner after all this?
Probably for the near future, I would think. I think he's got issues on down the line where a lot of these newer candidates have a lot more excitement behind them.
And who would you say, Craig, are the ones who are really going to
I'm going to take it just a slightly different direction.
Oh, okay, please do.
Look, I think the calendar matters.
Okay.
And so, like, if you are Harris, you have to look at Iowa and New Hampshire, you know, and then it's Nevada and South Carolina. You can't just have a South Carolina strategy. So she has to look at, where am I going to play? I think Iowa's the place for her to, she doesn't have to win it all, but she's going to have to do really well so she can get the bump into South Carolina and then get into those March 3rd primaries. And so the calendar is going to dictate. And then you have, which no one's really talked about yet, you have a battle in Iowa and New Hampshire between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. It's a drag-out fight. And in New Hampshire, these candidates have to ask themselves, does it make sense for me to go there and invest my time and money and compete there when those two are going to dominate? And in Iowa, they're going, you know, hand to fist. It's going to be tough for these candidates. And so I think Iowa's the opportunity. And then Biden, if he holds on, he's the front runner. If he starts to fall, you want to be the person taking that vote share.
Well, and right now, it really feels like Elizabeth Warren is surpassing Bernie Sanders on a number of different measures, which is not good for him, because I'm not quite sure how he bounces back, because a lot of people already have their minds made up about Bernie Sanders. His task is to bring a lot more people into the process than ever have been before, which he has been good at doing that.
It's a much different race for Sanders this time out. He got to debate one-on-one with Hillary Clinton the last time. Now he's in this free-for-all, you know, and you've got Elizabeth Warren directly challenging you and is attractive to the people who already support you.
You didn't see a lot of people going after Sanders in that second debate, even though that's what a lot of people predicted, and I think in part because a lot of them see where his trajectory is.
And they don't see it being super.
Well, and if you peel the vote off from Sanders, it's probably going to Warren.
Yeah.
Right.
So they don't have anything to gain from attacking it.
Okay, but do you think that it is wiser for the Democratic establishment to be going with someone who is super progressive or someone who is younger and more energetic?
Who knows? I would say that one of the interesting things about Elizabeth Warren's candidacy is that she has a lot of very left-leaning progressive ideas, pretty close to Sanders, not completely, but like, you know, 90–95% there, but she still has a broad coalition throughout the party. There's not a lot of people who are going to be super upset if Warren is the nominee as opposed to as if Sanders was.
Look, I'm probably not the right person to ask the question, but I think that if you're looking at the general election, I think you feel pretty good if it's Joe Biden or Harris or Booker or someone like that, broad appeal, and the party can still get behind him. I think the problem that you're going to have is if you go Warren or Sanders, maybe that race takes a different type of bent to it, and it could really help Donald Trump.
Well, you know that we'll be watching it together, so we appreciate you both. This very interesting conversation. Short break, we'll be right back.
My friend, if you've ever considered getting a walk-in tub, I'm so excited to introduce you to Safe Step Walk-In Tub's all-new shower package. For a limited time, when you purchase a Safe Step walk-in tub, they'll upgrade your order to include a free shower package. You heard me. That's an $800 value free. You can now just conveniently shower in your new walk-in tub. The luxurious rainfall shower head is adjustable for your height all the way to 7 feet. Now you can finally enjoy the best of both worlds with the therapeutic benefits of a warm, soothing bath that can help increase mobility, relieve pain, boost energy, and improve sleep. Or take a safe, refreshing shower, all in one amazing product. Please call now and get your free shower package, because you deserve it.
Call 1-800-345-1494 for your free shower package. Offers for a limited time, so please call now.
Next, Pickler and Ben, Kelly and Chrissy Metz, one-on-one.
That's exciting.
The This Is Us phenomenon.
I had 81 cents to my name at the point that I booked This Is Us. Obviously, it's completely changed my life.
Her new movie, Breakthrough, and music dreams.
I would love for us to write a song together.
I would love that.
Then multi-platinum duo, Big and Rich. Their 15-year wild ride.
We don't agree about everything, but at the end of the day, we come out on stage and make harmony. I wish America would do that.
Monday morning at 9.
On Local 5.
There's a problem around here that's been growing with the years.
Congratulations to the Local 5 political team, awarded a regional Emmy for program Medicine in the Making. And congratulations to Local 5's Elias Johnson, awarded a regional Emmy for his work as a video journalist. To view these and other local stories you won't see anywhere else, go to weareiowa.com. You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
Welcome back. Switching gears, the Medicaid mess in Iowa isn't going away. According to State Auditor Rob Sands, the two managed care companies that have been taking care of Iowans' Medicaid services are not following the rules. They violated certain parts of the legal and contractual obligations, potentially costing taxpayers a whole lot of money and harming Iowa's most vulnerable. This Week in Iowa exclusively spoke to Rob Sands before he made his announcement this week that he's asking the Department of Human Services and the managed care companies to fix the issues. Sands told us that's what the MCOs are doing, and he says it's unacceptable.
We are talking about the absolute bottom line, right? Are taxpayers in Iowa getting what they paid for when they signed these contracts with these MCOs? What these people experienced was MCOs pushing them towards nursing homes, which in their circumstances is actually more expensive for taxpayers, and they don't want to live in a nursing home. They want to live in their own home. And so it's bad for these individuals, and it's bad for taxpayers in general.
On this program, we've covered the stories of Iowans who can't care for themselves and who have been frustrated with the MCO's care. One of those families is the Hudson family from Windsor Heights. Their son Matthew has the ability of a 2-year-old and needs 24/7 care. The Hudsons chose not to move Matt into a nursing home or a long-term care facility. He's actually lived longer than expected.
We were told during the injury that the longevity would be about a decade. So we've exceeded that.
If we had made the decision to move Matthew to a long-term care facility, he would not be alive today. I mean, he would have gotten sick multiple times. They wouldn't have taken as good a care. They wouldn't be watching him as much. He would not have survived a long-term care facility at all.
The Hudsons had to fight hard for Matthew's care. They're not the only Iowans suffering, as the state auditor has highlighted in his letter released this week. Sand told us that in the weeks ahead, he will make a full assessment with the managed care companies and DHS for how best to address Iowans' basic needs. He'll be releasing that report to the media when he's finished. He said it's up to DHS to withhold payments to these MCOs if they want to go down that route. We'll take a short break. You're watching This Week in Iowa.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call the number on your screen and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month. So call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 800-436-9021 to receive your free Carefree Dental Card information kit.
It takes years of hard work to reach an elite level. Every day, practicing and honing skills. In every challenge, staying focused on the goal. For Local 5, it's being the best at telling local stories that matter to you. We're honored to celebrate student athletes on and off of the field. And we're excited for what's to come in the 20th year of Friday Night Blitz here on Local 5. We are Iowa Sports.
McKenna Hassey here. I think I'll be the fastest driver at the Rockin' Prevention Golf Classic at Blank Golf Course, Friday, July 19th. Come on out and help some kids and see if you can keep up with me. The 13th Annual Rockin' Prevention Golf Classic at Blank Golf Course, Friday, July 19th with an 11 a.m. shotgun start. Registration starts at 9:30 a.m., dinner at 5 with a really fast and terrific speaker. Have fun, help some kids. Rockin' Prevention.
I was just trying to be the person you thought I was.
You will never disappoint me for being you.
We can live free. We can live now. Yeah, nothing's gonna hold us down.
You're the best thing that has ever happened to me.
We are the fighters, the dreamers, the ones who believe us.
You are weird. You just gotta hang in there until people figure out that weird is cool.
Thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. We will continue to monitor the Medicaid situation in Iowa and get answers for you. And of course, we'll keep our ears to the ground on the campaign trail. We hope to see you again next Sunday.